I found 2 plane tickets to Emer Field in my husband's wallet. I secretly rejoiced thinking he wanted to surprise me. I didn't expect that. On the day our daughter turned 1 month old, he would say his company had arranged a last-minute business trip. I stayed awake all night. Meanwhile, his lover posted photos with the caption, "Fulfilled our promise to kiss in the church with my beloved. Thank God for not separating us." The photo showed them kissing while holding hands. I didn't immediately confront Felix. Instead, I turned to look at my sleeping daughter, then picked up my phone and messaged my father. "Dad, I've decided to take over your company." When Felix happily returned home, I had already packed my luggage. He paused for a moment and asked Harper, "What are you packing for?" Without looking up, I replied, coldly, "I'm going to stay at my dad's for a few days." Felix seemed pleasantly surprised, then pulled out a bracelet from his pocket, put it on my wrist, and pulled me into his arms saying, "I've been so busy with work lately." "I'm sorry, darling." I merely hummed in response. Felix stared at me nervous when he didn't hear me questioning him. In the past, I would have demanded Felix provide a reasonable explanation until I was satisfied. I thought I would collapse or even break down in tears. The day I discovered Felix's affair, not remain as calm as I am now. When I saw the tickets in Felix's wallet, I excitedly thought Felix isn't always so insensitive. Occasionally he creates surprises for me. After all, giving birth is an extremely difficult thing for a woman. He should reward me. I quietly waited for his surprise, even planning our trip to Emer Field, but night fell without Felix returning home. The next day when the plane to Emer Field landed, I finally received a message from Felix. The company arranged a last-minute business trip. "I'll be back in a few days." I realized he never intended to travel with me. He even forgot that today marked 1 month since our daughter, Ashley's birth. Looking at the Emer Field tourist attractions saved on my phone, I felt like a complete fool. Felix's lover, Kelly Simmons, posted new content tagged at a church in Emer Field. She wrote, "Fulfilled our promise to kiss in the church with my beloved. Thank God for not separating us." Her photo showed them kissing. While holding hands, I sneered to myself, thinking in a man's heart, his first love truly is irreplaceable. Felix came out of the kitchen frowning. "Did you eat mango at home? How many times have I told you I can't stand the smell of mango?" Since learning Felix disliked mangoes, I had basically never eaten them. I even gave up parsley, which I loved. During all these years together, I had always been the one adapting to his lifestyle. After seeing that photo, I suddenly felt a sense of liberation. I shouldn't make myself so miserable for someone who doesn't love me. Ashley started crying and I picked her up, preparing to return to the bedroom, to breastfeed. Felix quickly blocked my way. He said, "Harper, I haven't eaten yet." I asked, puzzled, "Then cook something." "Why are you telling me?" Felix clearly expected me to be like before, always having dinner ready for him no matter what. Holding Ashley, I turned and said to him, "Or you can order takeout." Ashley always falls asleep quickly. I received a message from my father, Bob Wilson. "Harper, I've asked you so many times, but you've always refused to come back and manage the company. I'm getting old. Can you help me? I know you want to protect Felix's pride by not letting him know about our family's financial situation, but you're my only child. My company can only go to you." I felt a pang of guilt. My parents have always cared for me, yet I was willing to refuse helping them. For Felix's sake. "Dad, I've decided to manage your company." My father's company, Wilson Group, has invested in many businesses domestically. My parents had asked me multiple times to take over Wilson Group, but out of concern for Felix's fragile ego, I had always refused them. Felix and I were college classmates. He was the only person from his village to attend university. He worked incredibly hard and truly achieved quite a lot, but what he didn't know was that these achievements were largely due to my quiet support behind the scenes. As someone from a rural background, Felix struggled to compete against those with power and influence. On my birthday, Felix waited for 3 hours in the snow. When he saw me, he immediately dropped to one knee and asked, "Harper, will you marry me?" Felix's cheeks were red from the cold, but his eyes were bright. As they reflected my image, my heart raced and my hands nervously clutched the hem of my clothes. Felix moved closer, kissed my face, and then whispered in my ear, "Harper, will you be my wife?" "Yes," I blurted out. He knew I would say yes. Everyone in college knew I loved him, and just like that, we got married soon after. After our marriage, Felix wouldn't let me work, claiming he could support me. Whenever I mentioned wanting to work, Felix would get drunk and ask, "Harper, do you look down on me too? Have you always looked down on me because I'm from the countryside?" I knew he had strong pride, but I never confronted his insecurities. I believed I was a good wife. Bob seemed to sense something was wrong and messaged me, "Are you and Felix doing okay?" I didn't respond. Shortly after he said, "Baby, we'll support whatever decision you make." Felix came to the bedroom after dinner. Turning away from him, I said, Ashley needs milk in the middle of the night. You should sleep in the guest room. In the past, I would always stay close to Felix after his business trips, not wanting to leave his side, but now I couldn't even bear to look at him. To my surprise, Felix erupted in anger, completely disregarding our sleeping Ashley Harper. Enough. I've already explained to you that Kelly and I went on a business trip together a week ago. It was a work arrangement I couldn't refuse. If I don't work, you and Ashley can't survive. We need money. How long are you going to be angry? You're no help with my work. You're nothing but a burden. If Felix hadn't reminded me, I would have almost forgotten how stupid I am. A week ago, Felix disappeared for an entire night. After giving birth, I experienced severe abdominal pain and the doctor required a family member to accompany me for a postpartum checkup. But that day I couldn't find Felix and had to ask a friend for help. My friend discovered Felix, embracing Kelly in a private room at a nightclub the next day. I had a huge argument with Felix in the hospital room. Felix still thought I was being too petty. He said I was drunk that night and there were so many people there. Nothing could have happened between Kelly and me. Why have you become so suspicious since your pregnancy? Are you experiencing postpartum depression? If there was something between Kelly and me, I wouldn't have married you. Kelly even came to visit you when you were giving birth, yet you misunderstand her like this. You're being too harsh with such dirty thoughts. I think I should have called a priest to marry them when I first saw them together. When I saw the plane tickets, I still had illusions about Felix, but reality hit me hard. It suddenly hit me how utterly exhausted I'd been all these years seeing Felix's displeased expression. I calmly said, "No, you misunderstood." Felix probably didn't expect me to be so composed. I actually saw him become a bit flustered. He asked Harper, "Are you really not angry?" I smiled and said, "Now, please go to the guest room. I need to sleep now. I'll have to feed Ashley soon." I turned off the lights and got into bed before he could respond. Felix stood up, unhappily, and left the bedroom. I wondered, doesn't Felix always dislike it when I make unreasonable scenes? Why is he still angry when I'm so calm this time? Early the next morning, Felix had prepared my favorite breakfast. He said, "Harper, you're awake. I heard the food you had in the hospital wasn't nutritious, so I bought your favorite sandwich today." So Felix had known all along that the food in the hospital cafeteria wasn't good, so he knew what I didn't like to eat. Looking through Kelly's online posts, I discovered that Felix was very familiar with Kelly's preferences. Kelly doesn't like eating out yet. Felix is willing to cook himself, just earn her praise. But since I gave birth, his attitude toward me has been so cold. I realize he doesn't love me anymore, but I can't help wondering what true love really is. I've seen what Felix was like when he loved me, but sadly, those beautiful times are gone forever. Felix pulled out 2 tickets from behind his back and said, "Harper, you mentioned wanting to visit Emer Field. I'm on vacation recently and seen you're in low spirits. I've already bought the tickets. Let's go on a trip." I found it ridiculous. He would take different women to the same city twice. Suppressing my anger, I smiled and said, "I can't go. Ashley needs care and I don't have time." He replied, "I'll hire a nanny to look after her." I looked up at the falling leaves outside the window and said, "Felix, Emer Field's most beautiful season has already ended. You've already experienced it with the person you love most." I kept the second half to myself. Felix awkwardly said, "I'm sorry, I forgot," but I knew he hadn't forgotten. I said, "You should get to work or you'll be late." I thought my attitude made my stance clear enough, but Felix believed I was just being moody. So lately he's been trying everything to cheer me up, even suggesting taking me to an amusement park. The hollow promises Felix made no longer stirred any emotion in me. After all, something unexpected always happens before he fulfills them. I realized then that it might have been because Kelly was jealous of me and deliberately made things difficult for Felix, but this time Felix's plan went smoothly. When Felix drove up to me, Kelly was sitting in the passenger seat. She said, "Harper, get in." Kelly extended her hand to greet me as if she were Felix's wife, Felix Hurley explained. I told her we were going to the amusement park today. Kelly was interested in joining, so I agreed. Kelly gets carsick, so I let her sit in the front. "Would you mind sitting in the back?" Felix asked tentatively, his eyes betraying his discomfort before I could answer. Kelly interjected, "Oh, Felix, Harper will definitely understand." After saying this, Kelly lightly patted Felix's chest. Felix reflexively held Kelly's hand, looking at her tenderly. The scene turned my stomach, filling me with a wave of revulsion that washed over me. Even though I wanted to break up with Felix, the display of their intimacy still made me feel physically ill. Felix came to his senses and abruptly let go of Kelly's hand, appearing somewhat embarrassed. I walked to the front of Felix's car and calmly said, while looking into his eyes, "Felix, let's get divorced." Hearing this, Felix immediately got out of the car and came to my side saying, "Harper, don't be angry. We are just going out to have fun. Bringing Kelly along doesn't affect anything." Don't treat her as an imaginary enemy. I sneered. Felix, you misunderstand. I'm not treating her as an imaginary enemy. I just want a divorce. Seeing how serious I was, Felix coldly said, do you have to argue with me in front of others? Ashley is still young. What do you plan to do if we divorce? You have no capability. You can't survive without me, with your abilities. It's difficult to survive in this society. I've really spoiled you all these years. I chuckled lightly. What in all our years of marriage? When have you ever spoiled me? Felix looked hurt and said, Harper, haven't I? Everything in our home was bought with my salary. You've never worked all these years yet. Now you're so arrogant and domineering. If you married someone else, no one could tolerate your bad temper. Felix furiously tore the divorce agreement to pieces, his face flushed with anger, as he said, don't use divorce to threaten me. You are annoying. Kelly ran over from the side crying and explaining. Harper, you're really misunderstanding Felix. There's no need for you to argue because of me. I shook off Kelly's hand and said, you're filthy. At that moment, a car pulled up nearby. A well-dressed man got out. Upon seeing him, Felix quickly composed himself, stepped forward with a smile and said, Mr. Brown, what a coincidence meeting you here. If you had notified me in advance, I would have booked a hotel for you. Owen Brown ignored Felix, came to my side and said, Ms. Wilson, Mr. Wilson sent me to take you home. Please get in the car. Ms. Wilson. Felix was stunned.